Welcome to Because We Make, the podcast about making, creativity, and why we do what we do as makers and creatives. I'm your host, Vincent Ferrari, and joining me as always, my good friend and co-host, Mr. Ethan Carter. What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
What's going on? That was quite the intro. It brought me back. I love it. I love it.
It's really funny because I wanted to see if I could still do it from memory, so I didn't practice it today. I was like, I just figure I'd get you on and just do it like the old days.
Well, as you started, I was like, wait a second. That's not what?
Do you know what show he's on?
Yeah. No, it's like it's crazy. I feel like it's like one night only, reunion tour.
Like the monster truck jams, like
Yeah.
Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, it's like I was saying right before we got on, and most people probably know that listen back then is I always kicked off right before the show with a coughing fit, and it's happened again tonight. So it's definitely a mental thing, but it was nice. It felt right. It felt right, Vincent.
Well, are you in Smokepocalypse like we are in New York and New Jersey?
It's past us now. What was it? Monday? Yeah, Tuesday. Tuesday was really, really bad. I'd take the dogs for a walk, and you could see it like in the sun. It was like you could just see it's like foggy, and you could just feel it too. And I've got asthma and everything like that, and I could feel it in my throat. It's like horrible.
I've been having
nothing like you guys, nothing like New York City. Oh my God.
I've been having a lot of trouble. Like all night. Like it just kind of sits in your lungs, and then at night you start having coughing fits from it.
Yep.
I was like, it was funny because it was Tuesday? Because Tuesday I was sitting there going, because I started seeing the alerts come up, and I'm like, oh, everybody's just being a bit of a bitch, right? Like it's like, all right, we know it's smoky, big deal, and I'm like, it's not that bad. And I started smelling it with my windows open, and I'm like, all right, it's not that bad. I actually kind of like the smell of burning wood.
Yeah,
so
no, it's like a campfire, right?
Yeah, but I would say that lasted about an hour.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh God, close the windows. It's horrible. Like I'm dying in here.
It is bad. I mean, it's we had one other time really, really bad here. I can't remember what it was from, and I got like really sick for it. Like all my glands got swollen and stuff like that.
Yeah, my
I had to go
throat
to the
was
doctor. Yeah.
badly swollen. Like
Yeah,
last night was the worst. Like I was coughing up like almost black tar. Like
But if you think about
and
it,
I don't smoke.
Right. But if you think about it, it's like sitting in front of a campfire, like in the line of smoke for like 24 hours a day.
Well, I drove up to Al's. So I drove up to Al's Wednesday, and the nerds are going to appreciate this, but I drove up to Al's on Wednesday, and the overall atmosphere of the air and outside was so orange that when I looked at the nav on my car, it looked blue. Because my eyes were so distorted from looking at orange, that when I looked at white, it looked blue.
That's crazy. Yeah, no, I believe it. Yeah, the only other experience I really had with it was I lived in Georgia. I don't even know if we ever talked about this, but I lived in Georgia, well, just off the coast of Georgia for a year for work. And there were some fires in Georgia. And I woke up the next morning and went outside, and it looked like it was winter. It looked like it snowed on my car because the ash had flown that far, and it was like western Georgia, and I was all the way up on the off the coast, so on the eastern side. It's crazy. It's crazy how far that stuff can go. I mean, that's what's amazing to me is the distance that smoke can travel in the atmosphere and everything.
I was looking at an air quality map today, and like Delaware is like bright purple. Like yeah, and they're looking at the numbers, and it's like, I don't know what the number exactly means, but I know that anything above like 60 to 80 is really bad for you. And I even showed Kathy, I showed Kathy this morning, we were at 265. And it was like, I don't know, it's like, this isn't even safe to go outside today.
Well, that's what they're saying. They're saying you should you shouldn't go outside unless you absolutely have to, right? I mean, it's...
Yeah. I was talking to Beth yesterday. They actually let the kids go home from school early, and they were debating what they were going to do today because it was just a professional development day because that's how bad it was. It's wild. I know we're talking about this. Like, I know I have listeners in California, and I know they're listening to this going, haha.
Yeah. Now you get it.
Yeah. But I understand now. Like, I was like, I always wondered like what they were going through. Like, what is it like to be in the middle of that? And I'm like, I've experienced it.
Yeah, and I don't want to.
Over it.
Yeah. It was funny. When I was, it's all what you're used to, right? Because people in California probably can't imagine getting 3 feet of snow in like
You're right.
24 hours, right?
You're right.
And when it was, oh, it was when I did the Make 48 last year,
Mhm.
we got a tornado warning, and like all of us from the from the northeast, like me, Dre, Lucas, we're all like freaking out. We're like, what? Should we get in the basement? They're like, they just like kind of like smiled and gave us that like courtesy like giggle. They're like, this is nothing. And then like the next week, I got a message from them from that the couple that leads that, and they're like in the basement. They're like, yeah, another Tuesday night. They're just like, maybe just go down to the basement for a little while and hunker down.
We'll
But
sit
it's
there,
all what you're
bring a
used to,
couple of
right?
bottles of water, and go have a good night. Listen to the radio for
Exactly.
a couple hours.
Exactly.
The people around the country are very, very used. It's like when, I had friends in Alabama, and when they had an ice storm, and I was like laughing. I was like, "We
Right.
drive in that. You
Yeah.
guys, you guys are like on full lockdown. We drive in that." But then we get a hurricane, and it's like that, and they're like, "Guys, what's wrong with you? Like, this
It's
isn't
like, yeah.
even like this is
It's like
pissing in the
and it's not
wind."
even a bad hurricane. It's just a lot of rain. We're like
Exactly.
panicking.
So now that we've gotten the weather report out of the way,
Yes. Everyone
welcome
loves when we talk about
back.
weather, right?
Exactly. So you've never actually been on Digitally
I have
Creative,
not. I have not.
but you are one of the reasons that this podcast actually exists.
Wow.
It is kind of cool to catch up with you. In fact, I love telling the story that the first person that I bumped into at Maker Camp this year was you. As
Yeah.
I was walking in, it was like, of all the people I could have bumped into first, it was
It
you.
was and it was amazing. I was literally maybe it was Friday. It might have been Friday, but I was talking to Jimmy and his sister who I had just met,
Hmm.
and Jimmy was kind of talking about like our podcast that we had done a podcast and everything, and I
Hmm.
just kind of off the cuff was like, "Yeah, I'm so." Oh, he asked if you're coming. I said, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's coming." I think
Hmm.
Saturday. At that point, I thought you're coming on Saturday, and then I think you switched it to Sunday.
Yep, yep.
Um, and I was like, "Yeah, I heard he's coming Saturday. I can't wait to like finally meet him in person." And Jimmy was like, "What? What?
It's like, you guys
You
never met
guys?"
in person?
But it is crazy, and I mean, I knew that, but it still took me back. It made me take a step back and be like, "Wow, the amount of hours and conversations that the two of us have had to
Two
have never
two
met in
hours
person."
2 hours a week over the course of 2 years.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
it's a hun that's
crazy.
200 hours of chatting, and we never met in person.
Never met in person, and Jimmy, it was like blew Jimmy's mind. I'm like, but you kind of get it. Like you didn't. I mean, I guess you had the 100 episode,
Yeah.
of their podcast, but it's just funny that you can have. I guess that's this day and age too. You can have those friendships and those connections, and never meet someone in person. It's too bad, but that was literally one of the highlights of that weekend for me, and it was a weekend full of highlights. So it was like it was amazing when I saw you walking up. It was
I
it was a
wasn't
special moment.
I wasn't sold on going. I'm not
Yeah,
even gonna lie. I really wasn't sold on going, and if it wasn't for Keith, I probably wouldn't have gone.
yeah,
But he really was very, very he's a good salesman for Maker
yes.
Camp. Honestly, I feel like they should hire him and
Hmm.
put him in the PR department for Maker Camp, because the guy made it sound like the best day ever.
Yeah.
And I was gonna go on Saturday, but then I found out that Meg and Chris from Onyx Designs were not gonna be there until Sunday. And I'm like, all right, I'll go Sunday. And I am so glad I went. I had the greatest time ever. I did not do a damn thing other
Yep.
than
Meet people.
other than rub elbows with people and say hi
Yep.
to people and get my picture taken and get 3D scanned, which is why I have
I
a
know.
little
I
mini
saw that. I
me.
love that. I'm so jealous. No, it's funny. It's. I mean, that's what these events I think for a lot of us are
Mhm.
is getting to meet or getting to hang out with the people that we interact with so often but never get to see
Yeah,
in person. And I think Maker Camp is. If we're doing a sales pitch for Maker Camp, but I think Maker Camp has really become kind of like a family community. It's really and I think a lot of that goes to Austin too. I give Austin a lot of credit of just kind of
100%.
creating this environment where you feel like family. I mean, so I taught the class that at Maker Camp, but then I taught the class in February, and it was the first like winter class, and it wasn't a huge class, but it wasn't even like I was teaching. I mean, I s- still I got nervous tonight. I still always get nervous for anything like this, right?
Of
Any kind
course.
of time I'm talking, and I think
You
it's
get nervous when something matters. You're like me.
went
You
right.
get right. That's because it's important and you
It's
want to do
important,
it well.
exactly, and I care. Right, and so I was super nervous about teaching class because that was the first time I taught in person was Maker Camp, like first time
Wow.
I'd ever taught in person, and really time I taught to directly to people and not just on videos. And you think about it, I was talking to Bettina. It's like she's like, "Eh, you teach all the time. Like you make a lot of videos. Like you can do this." It was a
Mhm.
pump up, but it's different when you're standing in front of live people, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know where I was going with that. But it's just so I was just nervous, and I was super nervous for the class too because all of a sudden now the class was all these people came. Like Maker Camp was people came that were signed up for. They came to Maker Camp,
Mhm.
and I was an offshoot of that. I was one thing that they did that weekend. So it wasn't
Right.
like if I bombed, I wasn't ruining Maker Camp, right?
Right, right, and no one was gonna go, "Ethan Carter just killed my whole weekend."
Right. Why did I do this? But like the intensive weekend classes, I felt like these people are paying a good amount of money
Mhm.
and taking a weekend out of their time to come and learn from me. And I'm like, as you know, and this is it's I always get in trouble for trying pretending to be my I'm not pretending, but like not feeling like oh, imposter syndrome, right?
Yep, yep.
Um, like I'm not I'm not a master leather worker. I'm not I'm not someone that does it. I have like I've learned over the time and I do all this stuff, but I'm not like an actual. I don't consider myself a leather crafter. Like I don't know. I'm a leather crafter, but I don't consider myself an expert.
Right. You're not an expert. Okay,
I'm and I'm not, and I
I
don't
can live
think
with that.
yeah, I'm not an expert. So to have people coming to a leatherworking class, I felt really nervous about whether I could deliver. But the environment that Austin creates through that, I think, is a really like welcoming environment where it's just kind of you're coming there and we're hanging out and we're learning while we hang out,
Mhm.
and I think that is also the Makers Camp. It's not supposed to be this um, come see your favorite like YouTube celebrities. It's come hang out with everyone, and they'll be there as well, right? So
Well,
I don't know.
I think the one thing that Maker Camp shows, and, we'll talk talking about experts
Yeah,
versus people who are just really skilled and have a wide range of knowledge, is that there is a lot to be gleaned from people who haven't reached expert level,
a hundred percent.
because nobody that taught anything at any of the tents is an expert in the
Right,
field.
right.
They're very skilled. There's a lot of very skilled people with very specific skills, like Liam Neeson in
Hmm.
Taken. They have people have a very specific set of skills, and they're willing to share them, right? You don't have to be an expert to share what you know. Like, I
Right,
can teach people a lot about a lot of things, and I'm not an expert in anything. I wouldn't
right.
consider myself an expert at literally anything.
And I don't think I
But
ever want to be either. I mean, that's the thing. I think that's part of this community. I mean, if I think I'd probably have gotten bored with it and
mhm.
spent too much time if I became an expert. That maybe that's a wrong way of thinking about it, but
Not really. That's the Bob Claggett way of thinking, right? He always
right.
talks about wanting to stay a generalist. He wants to be competent at a lot of
Yes,
things, but
exactly.
doesn't need to be an expert at anything.
But I think that's also to your point. I think that's also something that Maker Camp and Austin and everyone realizes that you don't have to like you
Mhm.
have knowledge to share, and there's actually knowledge in there's an experience to learn from someone who isn't an expert
Right.
because they're closer to your learning level, right?
Sure.
They're closer to where you are, so they can kind of
And it hasn't been
explain.
that long since they were where you
Right,
are.
right,
They
exactly.
understand what it's like to be new to something, whereas somebody who's been doing something for 20 years is probably a bit disconnected from that initial dive into, the skill pool and learning something new. It's not something that they're used to.
Absolutely, and even when I started doing that class, I mean, when I taught the class at Maker Camp, is I forgot how much I had learned, right? And I think to your point, if you're an expert, you're even further removed from
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
And I remember saying, I mean, I think I kicked off every class basically being like, I'm going to show you how I have learned and done things. There's a lot of things that I don't do the quote traditional or correct way, and I will, uh, but it's what works for me,
Sure.
and I'll explain why it works for me. And if I have the opportunity, if I do know that the proper way, I'll try to tell you the quote unquote right way. but there's a lot of reasons why I do it the way I do it, and I also think there's value in that. For
Of
example,
course.
like stitching ponies.
Mhm.
Everyone uses. I mean, a lot of people use the stitching ponies, and they are more efficient because you don't have to hold the leather and you can kind of go faster and stuff like that. But one of the reasons I got into leatherwork, which we've talked about a million times, I'm sure, but uh, got into leatherwork and why I kind of taught myself to stitch without a stitching pony is so that I could do it anywhere, so that
Right.
I could, I've always talked about I quit at 4:30 on a Saturday and Sunday. Like that's my cutoff, so that I don't become the guy that never spends time with Bettina. And so I come up. But that allowed me to keep working, so I could stitch upstairs while we watch TV and
Right.
spend time with my partner, and not have to stop working, but also be able to spend time. So I explained that, and I said, but there's a lot of reasons why stitching ponies are really beneficial.
Of course.
So and
Well,
so
if you're doing a
yeah,
bigger project, if you're doing a very big project with a big piece of leather, which tends to get heavy,
yeah,
you're not
yes,
gonna do handheld stuff. But
yeah,
if you wanna take a, one
coasters or
wallet that you wanna finish
yeah,
while you're at the Cape on vacation for a weekend, like,
exactly.
then you do it Ethan Carter style. I think one of the things that endears people to your videos and, obviously you've blown up since you were on the podcast. I remember when you hit 5,000 people on Instagram, you're at what, 60 something now?
No,
I
I'm
don't
at
even
47 something, but
47. So you're
it
basically 10 times the man you were when you were here. Um, but one of the things I think that endears me to you and endears other people to you is they watch you doing it your way. And it's like, because a
mm,
stitching pony is not cheap,
mhm, right,
right? And if you're of the mindset, stitching ponies are not cheap, leather tools are not cheap, none of it is cheap. Leather is not a cheap hobby, right?
right,
But there are places that you can strategically save money.
yep.
Instead of a stitching pony, if you're doing all handheld stuff, you can use a squeezy clamp. You know,
Or a parallel, or what are they called? Parallel clamp, the wooden um,
yeah, the a hand clamp, the hand
hand
screw
clamp.
clamp type
Yeah,
clamps.
those are basically
Yeah,
stitching ponies, right?
right. That and but you are one of the few people in the leather space as the leather daddy, wink, wink. But you're one of the few people that actually does it that way. So
Yeah.
you're kinda turning people on to something that they may have thought was prohibitive. I know that Grant tells the story, when he was trying to buy, stitching chisels,
Mhm.
and you actually helped him find a cheaper set that was just as good quality. I know that
Yeah.
when I wanted to get a slightly better one than the one that came with my cheap Amazon set, you told me which one to get.
Yeah.
I think all those kinds of things are the kind of things that people, yeah, experienced people are like, "No, I'm just gonna buy, one $200 stitching chisel," and it's like, "Okay, that's great, but, what does the guy who wants to dabble do?"
Right.
And
Right.
your advice to me and to pretty much everyone that's asked you is just get the set on Amazon. If you
Mhm.
like it, figure out what tool doesn't work for you and upgrade that tool. But
Yeah.
most of the tools in that set are probably gonna be fine while you're learning.
Absolutely. And it's funny. One of the things that I learned from teaching the class. Like it's funny because it's one of those things. I think I learned from teaching the class just as much as anyone learned from me, right? So I
Mhm.
watched everyone, and learned what people struggled with, and it was
Right,
the stitching chisels. Um, the end result, you can have the cheapest set of stitching chisels. The end result will be the same.
right.
It's the how easy it is to use, and and how enjoyable the experience is,
Sure.
right? So that's why you spend more. It's same with like a lot of tools, right? It just makes it a lot of things just make it more efficient and more enjoyable, but you can get the same quality a lot of times. It's just harder to get there.
Was there anything that anyone when you were teaching the class, was there anything that anyone struggled with that actually surprised you? Like, where you went, "Ah, didn't expect that to be a thing," like, but it kinda like, did you
Yeah,
teach a technique and they just went it just wasn't, like, clicking for someone, like, or
that's a
and did
really good
anything like that
question. I
surprise
mean,
you?
the big so I'll start with the biggest hang up was getting the stitching chisels out of the leather. And that is one of the biggest like hurdles,
Huh,
especially through thick leather. And that
yeah,
is one of the biggest differences between entry level chisels and $300
mhm,
chisels is the ease of getting it out of there. And everyone struggled with that. I mean, and it was one of you could see it. You could kind of see them being frustrated. And that was the bottleneck, or the part aspect of making a wallet that everyone hated the most.
Mhm.
And so I recently just kind of did a post about a way of making something that made that easier. And Keith is gonna my buddy Keith, he came to the one of my classes. He's 3D printing some. I think if I you know I think I'm going to teach a class again, hopefully, and he's going to make some for Maker's Camp. But it was interesting to see everyone having the same kind of like frustration
Mhm.
with getting the stitching chisels out of there. But that's a really good question. I don't know. I think I'm not answering your question, but one of the things I learned from like that I picked up on is how much people wanted to learn how to dye leather, and
Mhm.
I had never done that. I mean, I still to this day I don't like dyeing leather. It's messy. It's hard to get really good consistent.
Stinks.
It stinks, and you can buy it pre-done, and it's going to look a lot better than I'll ever be able to do it. But
Mhm.
I, but in both cases, people really wanted to dye the leather, and so I made it that kind of convinced me that I need to learn how to do that. There
Mhm.
was a motivating factor where I needed to like you have to learn how to do this. If you're gonna be a leather worker and you're gonna teach any kind of class ever again, you really need to know this skill. So that was another thing that I got out of that is it kind of forced me to get out of my comfort zone. And if you watch my videos recently, I'm doing a lot more leather dyeing, and
Mhm.
I'm still not great at it. But I'm learning a lot, and in some ways, it's exciting again. Right, all of a sudden, I'm a student again of trying to figure it out and learn and try to make something better and everything like that. So
What's the cool part of doing working with something as big as, like, leather or
yeah,
what
something
there's
this broad, right?
always another thing to learn, like,
Hmm.
I watched we've talked about it, I watched, the YouTube channel Hans Atelier,
Yeah. Hmm.
and it's like, oh my god, like, if you don't wanna try leather after you watch that channel, then you're probably not interested enough, like, you watch the stuff that's made on that channel and you want to dive right in and start making stuff. It's
Absolutely.
incredible
Yeah.
what is made on that channel. And you see, like, every video is this beautifully shot, epic documentary masterpiece, and every single video is different. They make a bag one way, then they make a
Yeah.
bag another way, then they make a bag another, they make a lot of bags and none of them are the same.
Right.
And it's I love that there's so much room to learn and so much room to grow, and I also love that, possibly the next Ethan Carter teaching experiment will involve at least some minor dying, like
Yeah, no, definitely. No, it's exciting, and it does open it up too to more variety. I can have more control over what it looks like and everything like that.
Mhm,
But yeah, I think the other thing too is like, and Grant is a good example of this, and a lot of people are, but it's such a you don't have to be like I'm going to get into leatherwork to
right.
find leatherworking useful. I mean, he's made Grant's made wrapped bike handles, and he's made so it's
He's making the keychains for the podcast by, wet
exactly
forming, it's like
you can do all these little things that are just complementary to your craft. I mean, I know there's people that make they specialize in cutting boards and custom cutting boards, and they have versions where there's a leather, like the grip part is made out of leather, and it's just a very subtle thing, but it distinguishes their product versus another cutting board. So it's
sure.
just, yeah, and I think that's also what's exciting about these classes and these types of things, is because you can learn some of the basics, and and immediately incorporate them into your specialty. You don't
Mhm.
have to become a master. You can just dabble. So
And the results from dabbling
yeah,
are usually pretty damn good, like, I feel like that's what most people wanna do though, right?
right.
I think, I said it was the Bob Clagett philosophy, but I do think that it does fit the average person where they're trying to find where they wanna be skill-wise, like, what do they
Yep.
wanna learn? How much investment do I wanna make in learning how to I'll give you a good example. I have been working, and I've talked about it a few times, in fact, I have one of the pieces here that I did. Um,
Oh
I
yeah.
have been working very hard on getting better at hand painting
Right.
because it's been a weakness in my skill set my whole life. I sucked at it. and I've been getting much better at it. Like, I can already see I'm seeing the fact that I'm getting better and, but do I wanna be a master painter? No. I have no interest in that. Do I wanna be competent enough so that when I have an idea, I can turn that idea into reality by being able to paint the product rather than having to figure out a way to 3D print it in color or something yeah, no, I'd much rather be able to just take a thing and go, "Alright, I just have to paint this now."
Well, and I think there's something really rewarding too to something that you're not like that you're not good at
Mhm.
naturally. It's always rewarding when you are really good at something, right?
Of course.
Ego, it builds all of our egos up, right? Like you're
That's
just
the
a natural.
dopamine
If
hit,
you're a
right?
natural, right? If you're a natural at something, it's exciting. But I
Mhm.
think there's something also really exciting about getting better at something, or getting better at something that you know you're not a natural at. And
Right.
to your point, painting, I think again, like dyeing leather, I would consider like it's not something I anytime I have a success at it, it's a really exciting thing, even when it's not a great result, but it's a better result than I was expecting.
Right.
There's some value in that where it's
Of
really
course.
exciting, you know?
I think that's what drives a lot of us as makers. I really do. I think
Yeah,
that the ability to pick up a new skill and get good at it.
yeah,
And I do think one of the things that happens as you become a maker, and I'm learning this about myself, and I imagine you probably are also, it's not just a matter of getting better at one skill, it's learning how to learn a new skill.
yeah,
Like,
yep,
you jump into something and you see the failure, and it's like,
yep,
"Okay, I know all the failure points here." The next time you jump into something new, you're almost mentally prepared for where you're gonna struggle a little bit initially.
yep.
Like, I've been working on I I've been doing the weirdest things since I lost my job back in November, and I have been working with a company on a product launch that hopefully will happen in the fall. I've been working on it literally since before I lost my job. I've continued to work on it, and it's been a constant learning experience. I
Mhm.
designed product packaging for my prior
Right.
company. It's not something I'm unfamiliar with. Yet at every stage of the design phase for this company, I have hit a point where I'm like, "How am I gonna do that? Like, how am I
Yeah,
gonna do that?" I knew how to get started with it. Like, it's like, "Oh, just block everything out and start putting the graphics on. Just throw them on. Throw everything you want on the package on one side of the box. Okay, now where's it gotta go to make it look good?" Right?
right.
But I learned that because when I first learned how to do product packaging, I would design the whole package and then go, "Oh, I forgot to put this on the package."
Mhm.
And then have to basically squeeze something in afterwards, like
So if
when
you put
people
everything on there and
put everything
subtract,
on there put everything on it right at the beginning.
I
Either
gotcha.
either directly on the outlines or somewhere on the artboard where you can't miss that it's sitting there waiting to be put into your layout.
Right.
And I learned that doing that makes it go so much smoother.
Yeah.
It's just so much easier because now it's like, "Oh, okay, I know everything that needs to go on." And what you end up developing over time is you develop an eye like, "Okay, I know I have about this much room. That's gonna be too big." Like, I can look at something visually and just go, "That's too big."
Right.
I don't have to put it in the layout to know it's too big looking at it. And that's again, that's experience, right? But I only learned that because I screwed up so many times. You get
Yep.
the product photo and you're like, "Oh, it's gonna look good right here. Oh god, it's huge." You know?
Right.
And you've designed your whole layout around it. It's like, well, if I make it smaller, it'll fit. And then you make it smaller and everything
It
looks
does.
unbalanced and
Right.
terrible. And it's like, I
Yeah,
gotta
the
redo
proportions are
everything.
wrong then, and yeah,
Mhm. But
yeah,
that's the experience that you pick up. And like I said, you learn how to learn.
yeah,
You learn how to pick up a new skill.
yeah.
And funny you mentioned dyeing leather because that was the first thing I did with
I
leather.
know you did it before I had ever done it.
It's so weird, right?
Yeah,
And that's another thing, right?
yeah.
Because you've done thousands of hours of leather work. I've done dozens of hours of leather
Mhm.
work. And it's really, really funny to think that, the one thing you struggle with is the one thing I jumped into first. And I had
Exactly.
all the same struggles.
Yep.
I had all this. In fact, my Makers on Zoom having coffee keychain, I think that's the one I have, or it might be the clamp one. One of them, whichever one it is. Mine is purple because when Morley made it, I told him,
Oh, yeah.
"Don't
Don't dye
don't
it.
make it.
I
Yeah,
remember that.
don't make
Yeah.
it. Don't dye it. Just send it to me plain. I want to dye it. I want it purple."
Yeah.
And that's how I learned how to dye stuff. I have 12 different colors of dye sitting in my craft room.
Yeah. Well, and it's also funny. So one of the things I've learned is one of the reasons I didn't like dye was I got leather dye
Mhm.
and I was using it on veg tan leather, and the color was off. It just didn't look
It's
right. It dried it
splotchy.
out. Yeah, splotchy. Dyed it. I dried it out, and that was like probably my first experience. And I was just like, why am I doing this? I can just get it pre-finished, like. And
Mhm.
it was such a roadblock. And then after when I started to learn this, and when I decided I needed to learn this, I did more research, and lo and behold, you're not supposed to use leather dye on veg tan leather.
Hmm.
Yes, so you use leather dye on chrome tan leather,
Mhm.
but you use pro dye on veg tan leather,
Interesting.
and it was a completely different experience. So they cost the same. I don't know why, whatever,
Hmm.
but and I've had a couple people reach out and be like, like you get if you get ever get like a green hint, like it looks kind of greenish,
Mhm.
it's the wrong dye with the wrong leather,
That's
basically.
wild.
But it's
That's wild.
complete. But like again, there's one experience where something that I thought I was doing right, and it just kind of turned me off from the experience.
It just, like, shut down, like, "I'm done
Shut
with this.
down,
This
and
is
right,
not."
but if I had I done a little bit more research, I would have had a much better experience, and maybe I wouldn't. So it's
So
just
you
that's the other
excited so
thing.
you're excited now that everything you have out of leather is not gonna be brown anymore?
Exactly right, exactly. I can use all different colors. Yeah, exactly. I know.
Well, I there must be something to that because I remember when I told you
Oh
my dad
yeah,
was a
yeah,
loved doing leather work,
yeah,
and everything he made was brown. I don't think the man ever dyed anything. I think the closest he came to dyeing was the darker brown stuff to just kind of tone the leather a little bit
yeah,
instead of having it that super bright stuff that you get on the hide. And I think that it was the same thing for him. I don't think he liked doing it. That's why he
yeah,
never did it. He would hand stamp everything, and then after he would hand stamp it, you'd see him go in with a dauber and the bottle, and you'd see him just wiping it off. And
yep.
I always liked watching my dad do it. That's why it's funny when I met you. It's like and so you start talking about your process, and I watch your videos, and I'm like, oh my god, these are all the things I watched my dad do. Like
That's so
all
cool.
the stuff
Yeah,
I watched my dad do. My dad comes up a lot lately. If you haven't figured that part
yes,
out, but
yes, yeah.
so
No, yeah. It's. I mean, again, dye is a nasty thing too. I literally it ate through a plastic cup and stained my like workbench. And again, it's a workbench, doesn't matter. But I'm just like, again, it's just like it's not an enjoyable thing.
it's
But
not a toxic chemical. Why is it doing
right, exactly.
that?
Why did it eat through it? Like I kind of was like, it was kind of like when epoxy. There's only been a couple times where I've
Oh,
poured too much
you
epoxy and
you got a flash
haven't
skewer.
used it quick enough, and it like starts eating away and it's smoking, and you're like, I don't like. What do you do? It's like
Yeah.
melting, and yeah, it was
Well, you
like
wanna hear
that. It's just like,
I'll tell you a funny story like that. So I was working on Al and I were working on this huge project that went out, wow, went out in April already. That was a long
wow.
time ago. Holy crap. And, I was working with Montana Gold, spray paint, acrylic
Yep.
spray paint, which, by the way, I didn't know that was even a thing until I
Yeah, I didn't
started
know.
working
Yeah,
on that.
I've heard of
Um,
Montana, but I know
yeah.
Montana is like,
I can
but
see why people love it because you don't
yeah.
have to put a lot. It's really thick and it's great, but the problem is it clogs the button on the top of the
Uh,
can like nobody's business. So every night I would take the button off the can and I would drop it in a cup full of mineral spirits so that when I went to use it the next day, it was already cleaned out. So when we were done with the project, I had kept that same cup of mineral spirits for like a week. And Al, not really thinking it was going to be a problem, took that cup of mineral spirits with all the buttons in it and put it up on the shelf. Well, one day he goes to take the buttons out to put it on a can. He lifts the top of the can and
yeah, hoping.
it comes off the cup like the cup was melted from the mineral spirits. It's like, "Oh, so good lesson to know. Red
Yeah,
Solo cups don't like mineral spirits."
I would
Mineral
never have
spirits,
thought
something
that.
we bathe in practically as
Right.
makers.
That's
But
crazy. Never would have thought that.
yeah. It's like basically it does what acetone does to it, just takes
Right.
a little longer.
Huh.
So, yeah,
Huh. Yeah.
yeah. One of
Gross
those
products.
lessons learned,
Yeah.
right?
Lessons learned. Yeah, exactly.
So you have, I joked before about you, kind of blowing up a little bit, but you really have like it's been amazing to watch your growth
It,
since you left the show. And I was just wondering, what do you attribute that to, and how does it feel to kinda like, you're hitting the stride that you were really working hard to hit. I know the work you put in. I know the effort that you put into your Instagram account and the amount of love and attention you give to the projects you put on and how much thought you put into it in advance, all that stuff. How does it feel to do you feel like you're finally getting a little bit of the payback that you've worked so hard for?
It's I appreciate that, first of all. Thank you. That's, I mean, super kind. It's yes. So it feels good, but I will say this: I blew up, and it was like a 6 month blow up.
Mhm.
Um, and again, I'd like to think that everything I do is amazing and should go viral, but but that for those six
We all
months,
like to think
yeah,
that.
we all like to think that. There was a 6 month period where basically I couldn't do wrong. Like, it was just one of those things. So I'd have a post that would do like a post that would do insane, and then I'd have my like worst post would do like get like 20,000 views. I mean, I'm talking like 20,000 views was like a garbage post for me
Mhm.
during that 6 month period, which
Mhm.
is which before that, was insane. That would be
Right,
amazing.
you'd be jumping for joy.
Absolutely. So it's and then that stopped, and I had a 6 month period where I wasn't uh I wasn't I wasn't growing at all. I would lose followers every day, not a ton, but like 10 followers every day, and it was just like a slow death, you know, death by a million cuts or whatever the saying is,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
And it literally was like 6 months of that, and then recently, I was talking to people that have been doing really well, like Morley and Grant has, Grant had a really good streak recently, and I was talking about what they were doing, and they were saying basically like what was working for them was reels with a 9 by 16 with voiceovers and using captions, and I started doing that, and at the same time, and I hate the fact that I have it, but like I got the blue check mark, which I think is so. I hate the fact that everyone sees that I have the blue check mark because they know I pay for, but it was one of these where I was just 6 months of that slow creep down,
Mhm.
really kind of like I was like, let me try. I want to try different things to see if I can turn it around. So all that's being said is, I think there's some of I don't think you can blow up or do really well if you're putting out garbage, right?
Sure.
I don't think you're ever gonna do really really well if you're putting out garbage.
Mhm.
But I will say that there wasn't much of a difference from what I was doing before that 6 month boom, and then much of a difference between that 6 month like slow creep down.
So the guy in
And
the basement rolled over
rolled
unrolled over the
exactly,
rolled over the
exactly,
tube, and all of a sudden, everything started flowing again.
exactly. And I've always said it. You can't uh, complain about the bad times if you don't like acknowledge the good times when things are going really well.
Mhm.
And I really struggled with that because I didn't want to complain about it, about about the slow creep down. But it's hard not to. It's just frustrating when it's just frustrating. Like, you can't.
Well, it's
We're
also
humans,
it's partially frustrating. Jimmy was talking about it this week on Making It, and he was talking about how, he's kind of given up on, trying to figure out what the algorithm likes and what's going to serve because he feels like, and he said it, and I was like, I completely understand. He said he feels like he has no control over it anyway.
right?
So he's going to make what he's going to make, and he'll, if somebody gives him obviously good advice, he's going to roll with the good advice. But in general, it's out of your control. And I think a
It,
lot of people think it's in their control, and
and
it's just not.
and it's not because exactly, like, I never experienced the highs and lows
Mhm,
like I did in that 12-month period,
mhm,
because it was amazing. It was it was such a great feeling putting it out there, and I felt like, I mean, it wasn't. I didn't feel like I wasn't earning it, right? I was still
mhm,
putting out quality content, but I was also doing it on my terms. Where, again, I've said this before, but I went to the rule of thumb is you should post every day. Consistency every day, variety of like mediums, reels, stories, you know, carousels, all those things. That's the and I did that for a really little amount of time, and I just hated it. It wasn't what I
mhm.
wasn't didn't make me happy. So I
Right.
decided, I was like, you know what? I'm going to just do what I enjoy doing, which is putting out a full start to finish video on a small project, and having it be somewhat like a fun project or a fun creative idea, and hopefully showing some techniques and some teaching moments throughout that. And that's what I'm going to do. And so I did that, and for 6 months it worked great. Like, it
Mhm.
worked fantastic. And when it stopped and I was creeping down a little bit every day, even when I'd have posts, Vincent, that would have all the metrics. Like, if you looked at the amount of saves, the amount of likes, the amount of comments, the amount of shares, everything would be like, this post should do well. This is it's everything this post is getting should signify to Instagram that this is something that people like, and it just was shown to no one. And again, that's out of my control. What I struggled with was, I don't want to just post every day. I don't want to post things that I don't want to post just to
Of
try to
course.
change that, because that's not who I am. Like,
Right.
that's not who I that's not
It's
very
not fulfillment. That's
it's
not
not fulfillment.
fulfilling.
I
Yeah.
it, it didn't make me happy. So I did it for 6 months. I kept doing what I was doing. I think the difference is that when I talked to Morley and um
Grant.
Grant, thank you. Um, was that what they said was something I could incorporate into what I'm doing already. So all I had to do, so this is what I switched when I talked to them, is I still hate the 9:16 format. I think
Mhm.
I think it looks bad because you got text over everything. I just hate it. So what I do now, and hopefully Instagram's not listening, but what I do now is I literally do my videos in the 4:5,
And then you
and
put him on a 9 by
then
16 with black
right,
bars.
I bring it back into the editor and put it in 9 by
I
16.
noticed you did that. I'm like,
Yeah,
there's gotta be a reason he's
yeah,
doing this because
yep.
there's
And
that makes
then I added
sense.
voiceovers. I added voiceovers and do captions, and it in some ways it's actually got me better, because I hate doing voiceovers. It's not my, like, a natural thing. It takes me too
Mhm.
long. But I've actually gotten better at it because I do it every week now. Like, I do on
Mm.
and short videos. So, but it's that repetition of,
Sure.
what some when I do a YouTube video with a voiceover, sometimes it would take me 4 or 5 tries to get that, like, one little voiceover thing right.
Oh, yeah.
And so
You gotta get your
so
reps in. You gotta get your
yeah, you gotta
reps
get your
in.
reps in. So yeah, so I'm, like, somewhat tricking the system, I guess, but
Not really.
I
Not
mean,
if it's still working, so, I mean, you know what it is? You know what it is? I don't think people realize the technical limitations of 9 by 16 include the fact that you're looking at a very narrow field
yeah,
of what, like, if you're trying to show somebody how to do something, you have that much space to do it in.
yep,
And one of the things I learned when I was doing the reels, because I just stopped doing them for the show because they were taking a lot of time to find a couple of, like, short pithy clips that I could do in 60 seconds and put up, and it was like, I could be spending this time in much more valuable ways than that,
exactly.
right?
Yep,
But even when it's just talking headshots, framing something in 9 by 16 is really freaking hard. And I
yep,
don't think people appreciate how hard it is until you do it. Like,
yep,
I'd have a shot if, you're sitting there talking, and then you move like this. It's
yep.
like, well, there we go. That ruined that shot. Like, all right, if I want to learn how to do motion tracking in Adobe Premiere, then I could keep you in the frame. Otherwise, that shot's not going to work. Go find another one. It's
Well,
very restrictive.
you're right, though, too. I mean, that's the thing, is, even if I shoot the video in vertical or horizontal, the the second you are doing 9 by 16, you have no wiggle. Sorry, I
There's
just
no
said what?
width.
There's
There's no
no
width.
wiggle room, right?
Hmm.
If you the 4 by 5, there's a little bit of, like, you can, there's some movement that you can do.
Sure.
Um,
Well,
so
I learned it. So I was working on a resin project, and I had some leftover resin, and I turned it into a glowing rose.
mhm,
And I was like, okay, when I decided I was going to do that, I'm like, I am going to film this in 9 by 16. I'm going to do this the way you're supposed to do it
yeah,
for a TikTok.
yeah.
And I'm going to do it that way, and I'm going to see what it's like to work that way. Do you know how much reframing I had to
Oh,
do to
horrible.
make it
I'm sure. Yeah.
visually appealing
Yep.
for instructional purposes? Or
Yep.
and it wasn't even an instructional video, it's just I wanted to show the process. I was like, "No, I'm not doing this." Like, that was the last one I did. I'm not doing this. This sucks.
Yeah.
I don't wanna do this.
Yeah.
It's And it's
It's
not even limitations that we're putting on ourselves or things that we're not happy with. It's not, it doesn't feel, I mean, clearly it is, but it doesn't feel worth it. You
well,
know, it's like it's the catch 22 of it doesn't feel worth it, so I don't do it, but
mhm.
Instagram's not rewarding me because I'm not doing it. So,
But and that's why I was like, all right, these are two things that I can I can trick the it into thinking it's a 9 by 16,
mhm,
and I'm happy to do voiceovers. And if those two things and that works with what you know, I can implement that into my process,
sure.
and I'm happy to do it. I'm not willing to do is put out just content for content's sake. And if it's gonna take content for content's sake for me to grow on Instagram, I'm not gonna do it. It's not worth it to me at that point.
Is
So
it
yeah.
I wonder if it's, it's funny you say you don't wanna do content for content's sake because I've noticed a lot of the people I used to watch that were like, religious every week,
Hmm.
every week, every week. I noticed most of them aren't anymore. They're
Yeah.
like they're not like going months without an upload, but I follow I always joke about it because I realize how ridiculous it is. When I had Bruce on the show, on episode I believe he was on, like, episode 3
Three,
of
I
this
think three.
podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was, like, one of the first
Yeah.
guests I ever had. When I had Bruce on, he said he followed 500 YouTube accounts. I was like, "5? How do you follow 500 people?" I looked the other day, I follow 682 people on YouTube. And yet I follow them all completely. Like, I
Yeah.
watch just
Hmm.
about every video that everyone puts out on a daily basis. Kathy jokes with me all the time. She's like, "You don't really watch anything but YouTube." I was like, "Not
Hmm.
really." It's either YouTube, wrestling, or reality shows. Like, that's pretty much my life. That's what I watch on TV.
Yep.
And I'm realizing that a lot of people have realized that they don't wanna put content out just to have a video out. And I think the YouTube algorithm is adapting to that. Because it's like, okay, they used to want you had to upload consistently, even if it was every week, then you had to upload every week and it had to be on the same day. Now it's like, I don't think it matters as much. I think the algorithm has softened up a little bit on people who don't do that anymore because nobody's doing it.
No,
There are
I think now it's more the I mean, thumbnails are have always been important. Thumbnails and the
click through
title.
click through rate is
Click through rate is
everything
I
now.
think, but I think, and I hate that because I'm horrible at both of those things. But like that, I mean, I think that's part of it. I mean, those have always been important, right?
Mhm.
But I think now that I think those are king. I think to your point, right? I mean, Bob has talked about it a lot. They always posted, they always post their videos on Thursdays,
Mhm.
and I think last week or the week before he was like, yeah. Then we looked at when our viewers are
And
watching,
they're
and they're
on
watching on
Saturday. On
Saturday.
Saturday, yeah.
Yeah,
It's like,
so he's
"Oh,
like,
okay."
"Well, all right." So, but I think I don't. I think he's right in both camps. I think back when he was doing it, I think there
Right,
was a reward to posting on Thursdays every week,
right.
and the algorithm has changed. That's not important. It's
I
it's post when people are going to do it and get that click through.
I will say this though. I will say this for all the bitching that people do about the algorithm and the,
Hmm.
whatever. I will say one thing, and it's something I've noticed, and I can't be the only one that's noticed this. The recommendations are better than they've ever been.
I would
I'm
say so.
getting
Yeah.
a lot of recommendations of new channels. I've followed a lot of channels in the last 6 months, and the number of small channels
Hmm.
that I'm being fed is much higher than it used to be. Like I'm
That's
finding
awesome.
accounts that have like 1,200 subs.
Yeah.
And by the way, 1,200 subs, I'm not knocking 1,200 subs. I
No,
think
that's
that's
right.
awesome,
Right.
right? I think it's awesome to find those hidden gems in
Hmm.
seas of 75,000 reaction channels.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
um in fact, I had a guy message me on Instagram a couple of days ago, and he was telling me how much he liked the podcast, and he has like 400 subscribers. I went to his channel. His stuff is awesome.
Yeah.
Like it's awesome, and I'm like, oh my god! Like, how did we get connected? I don't care. The algorithm somehow found fit to either show him my podcast or to show
Right.
me his work. Like whatever it did,
Right.
but look what I found. This guy's a gem. Like he's amazing. And of course, it would be helpful if I mentioned his name right now, which of course I cannot mention his name because I don't have it handy. But the guy is like, no, but he was great. And I watched his channel. I watched one of his videos. I'm like, this dude is gonna just be like, remember when? It's very funny. Remember when we had Tyler Bell on and
Yep.
you and I said he was gonna be the next big thing,
Yep.
and we said it and he hadn't really blown up yet,
Mhm.
and now he's just exploded. I feel like
He's on the Roku channel, and,
yeah,
I love the David Picciuto he was like 2 weeks ago or something, he was that was his thing of the week was Tyler, and he's like, I know you guys have said it, but maybe I should listen to your things of the week or your recommendations more because I know you said it, but, yeah, no, he blew it up, and well, yeah, it is funny though, there's still so much though too, like, I'm trying to think of, why am I blanking? He's one of the biggest YouTubers. Oh, Mark Rober. I never
yeah,
seen a Mark Rober video, even though I'd heard his name a
mhm.
million times, until Bob did the collaboration with him, and so now I've been watching it, and it's just like I like
You get
this
it,
guy puts
right?
out 6 videos a year at
Uh-huh.
most, and I get it. Like he is such a it's so dynamic, right? His personality is so engaging. Like you can't not love him, right? And at the same time, he's teaching things and making you feel like you're getting smarter by watching a YouTube video, and it's entertaining. Like it's just mind-boggling. But I never watched his stuff, even though I've heard his
Yeah.
name a million
Well,
times on every podcast. Yeah,
the same thing happened with me with Mr. Beast.
yeah,
Like, I never watched a Mr. Beast. I would never watch a Mr. Beast. Like, I don't care about this
yeah,
guy.
yeah.
And one day, YouTube suggested Mr. Beast. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'll
I've
just
watched
watch
everything
it.
else
Just
on.
yeah,
Yeah,
right. Like I feel like I've reached the end of the internet. Is right? So
right.
I'm gonna watch Mr. Beast, and I was like, oh, I get it. Like I'm
Yeah,
watching it. I'm like,
yeah,
yeah. Is there? Are you gonna walk away feeling like you just stayed at you stayed at a Holiday Inn? No, you're not gonna be a whole lot smarter when you come out of a Mr. Beast video, but you're gonna be entertained.
right.
And it's like, okay, you know what? There's something to be said for that. And I think once I stopped treating YouTube like a research vehicle,
Yes.
I feel like I started enjoying it a little more. Like, I follow a lot of channels now where it's like, this is almost the equivalent of trash TV, but I like it.
I think you're right though. I think there's also that shift in YouTube. I mean, unfortunately, the only videos that do anything for me are the actual like step by step how to videos.
Sure.
But um, but I think there is a shift in on YouTube right now where personalities and you're subscribing to the person. I mean, you look at David Picciuto, right? He's
Mhm.
absolutely like 100% in on that now, right?
He
He's going to
sure
do what
is.
he's going to do. He's not going to worry about teaching. He's not going to
Re
worry about yeah.
remember a little channel called, I don't know, Evan and Caitlin?
Yeah, yeah,
They have
exactly.
completely pivoted away
Yep.
from being a project channel. They do a
You're watching it
project.
for them.
The project is the story,
Yep.
but you're not following their channel for the project. So my litmus test is when I bring someone outside of our community to watch what I watch and see what their reaction
Yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah.
Kathy absolutely loves Evan and Caitlin.
Yep.
Loves them. She's like, they're the greatest thing in the world. She loves Nerdy Crafter. She loves Evan and Caitlin. She likes Tyler Tube, and I'm like, wow, okay, so you and I look at the YouTube
Right.
differently. So
Yeah.
like when you get a civilian
Yeah,
in
yeah.
and they start watching your YouTube stuff, and it's like, because I watch a wide enough variety where if you sat and watched everything in my feed, you'd get a little bit of everything. And
Mhm.
I watch what she responds to and what she enjoys. Like I follow like 5 dash cam channels because I
Yeah.
find them fascinating. She watches them with me and she gets aggravated. She gets upset.
Right.
She wants a
Right.
dash cam in her car now. And it's like,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
it's so awesome. It's so awesome
Yeah.
to have that perspective and realize that, hey, if I don't want to make project videos and I wanted to do vloggy style videos, it may take a bit, but I could still find an audience for it, which is one of the reasons to bring it back to this show.
Yeah.
I am it is the core of the show is people who are creative in the digital world.
Right.
Okay. But the reality is I just want to talk to interesting people.
Right. Exactly.
Like
Right.
I don't
You want a
necessarily
not an
need it.
excuse, but you want a an
I don't mind that
opportunity. Yeah.
for me personally, I'm almost more impressed now by just having someone on and just seeing how I can contort them to fit the definition of
Yeah,
digitally
yeah.
creative. Like it's a
Yeah.
challenge. Like, all right, shoehorn them in, buddy, but you're gonna get them on the show. Like I've sent guest pitches out to people, and I'm like, "Hey, I know you're in the food space, but you're in the food space on YouTube, and to me, that's content
Digital.
creation.
Yeah.
So I would love to have." And I've really just expanded the definition of digitally creative to content creators.
Yeah.
And part of it, and controversial or not, I've been listening to a lot of Joe Rogan.
Mhm.
And say what you want about Joe Rogan, right? I understand that he's not everyone's cup of tea. I
Oh,
get that, and
he's
I'm not even.
polarizing, whether
But
whether you're like right, either way.
but here's the thing with Joe Rogan, and if you deny it, you are an absolute idiot, and I will tell you to your face you're an idiot. The man's an amazing interviewer.
Oh, yeah. No, no,
Eh,
no one could deny that. I
so
mean
he was talking to somebody the other day, and this is exactly the kind of show I want to do now. He was talking to somebody the other day because Joe owns a comedy club in Austin now called the Comedy Mothership. He was talking to somebody the other day. He goes, it's amazing. He goes, every time I'm in the green room and you bring somebody in, I don't know if they're a comedian, an actor, or if they just figured out like the double helix DNA and like mapped the human genome. He goes, I don't know who I'm seeing. He goes, that's how many people you bring in and how many people you've spoken to and how many you know. And I'm like, that's what I want to be.
right.
I want to be that. I want to be the guy that can bring anyone on and have conversations. One of the things that
I think
wasn't
I think
happening.
you can do that, Vincent, 'cause, I
Well, this is the thing, right? So when you were on, we weren't really getting, peel back the kimono a little bit, but when you were on, we weren't really getting agent pitches for this
Mhm.
podcast. I get agent pitches
Oh,
all the
really?
time. I get them
Nice.
all the time now. Like I get them. In fact, I had one recently. I won't put out who the person was that came on the show that was an agent pitch, but they pitched me being on the show, and I'm like, that sounds amazing. I love
Yeah.
the idea. I'll have you on. What was I going to talk about? I have no freaking idea what I was going to. I did not have a plan. Just went in. I'm like, just get him in, have the conversation, let him talk about what he's working on, and then go from there. It ended up being one of my favorite episodes because like this was way outside the box of what I would
Mhm.
typically say yes to as far as an agent pitch. And I wanna do more of that. Like,
Yeah.
you were talking about dyeing leather before. This is my thing.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. No.
this show is my thing, so now I wanna do more with this show.
I think there's I feel like there's a lot of that going around, and I'm
Mhm.
happy to hear that because I think there's a lot of like, do I want to? What do I want to be? Like, what do I want to do? Not what's going to work, but what do I want to do, and then how do I make it work?
Right.
And I think one of the good examples of this, and maybe this may be a horrible segue, but one of the people that has done that the best that I think is Dan Accuracy. Like
Yes.
I look at his channel, and I don't think I really realized it until I thought about it. Well, he did a thing recently about like he's done a couple VRBO like house tour or
Yeah.
like tour
Yeah.
things, and he's like I think he got like a lot of like not hate, but like a lot of like when are you going to do DIY projects? When are you going to do? And his response was like, listen, I've been doing this for like 12 years.
Mhm.
If I'm gonna do, like I need this to be something that I'm like excited about because that's what I like. If I'm not excited about it, then you're not gonna stick around anyways. And I'm not making it for you. I'm making it for the people that are here for me. And I think he's another one that's just he's made the channel for the people that like love him. He's made the channel about him, and
Mhm.
whatever he does, people are excited to see what he does. Right? Like
For
he's
sure.
a he can do resin projects, he can do house tours, he can do
He could do
unboxings.
see, the thing with somebody like him and, when you see how good he is and, full disclaimer for those of you that are new to the program, Dan Roto is one of my favorite human beings, like,
Yeah,
favorite artist,
you and
just
me
an
both.
amazing human being.
Yep,
I love that dude. He inspires the hell out of me. He's been inspiring the hell out of me for years.
yep,
But when you see how good he is at everything he does,
yeah,
it's like, why would you want him to only do DIY projects?
exactly.
I want
No,
in his world for a minute. Like, I listen to the podcast he does with his buddy,
yeah,
and it's like, Amar, that's his name. I
Mar, yeah,
listen to the podcast he does with Amar, and I love it. Is it relevant to me? I'm
no,
20 years older than him, probably
right,
not.
right,
But in the end, I enjoy it because I wanna live in his world. Like, even if it's only
exactly.
for an hour every couple of weeks when they drop an episode, I wanna live in Dan's world.
And you know
And it
what's
it's
Yeah, sorry.
almost restrictive to tell these guys, like, "I want
Stop,
you to
right,
why don't you do more resin projects?"
right. Do what
Because
you
he's a
do.
human being, he's bored.
Yeah, right, right. No, I think one of the things too that strikes me about him and a lot of the other people, like I remember when we had him on the podcast, I
Mhm.
remember being like, and you had introduced me, so I wasn't super familiar with him, but I was like watched a ton of his videos and stuff, and I was like, "There's no way this guy, like, this is a persona, like, this is a
It's him.
character," and he came on, and I remember that, and then like as you know, like recently I was super blessed to be able to like do a collab with him, and it was the same experience, Vincent. It wasn't
Mhm.
like there's no cameras, nothing filmed, nothing like
It's
that
just
would
Dan,
anyone
that's
would be
Dan.
know. It was just us texting back and forth. He is exact like the same genuine person that he portrays himself as. Again, I'm sure
Absolutely.
he's not always as energetic as he portrays, but he is that person. Like he was super uh
Enthusiastic.
I won't say who it was, but someone reached out to me after I did that, and they were like, he reached out to do a collab. Like, what was it like to work with him? I'm like, it was the easiest thing
Yeah.
ever. And I think he said it in the video, but it was absolutely true. He like reached out and was like, "Hey, I've got an idea for a collab. Would you be interested?" And I'm like, "Yes." I have no idea what it is, but I'm saying yes because you don't say no to that opportunity.
You don't say no
And
to working with him, right.
exactly, exactly.
It was
It's
so
awesome.
fun. I was so jealous. I'm not gonna lie. I
No,
loved the video, I loved the project, I loved the whole thing, and I was happy for you, and it was just watching you I was like, "Damn him."
I know.
Like,
No,
"Damn him."
I felt the same way watching. Like, I'm just like, what the hell happened? Right.
I know.
I know.
I know.
He's,
It
but
was
like,
crazy because he was one of the first people we had on in a really long time where I was genuinely nervous.
yeah, yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
was genuinely nervous, like, because by the time we had Jimmy on, I had already met Jimmy in person. So, as much as, as important a person as Jimmy DiResta is, I had already met him.
yeah, yeah.
So, there
Right.
wasn't that breaking the ice and not trying to look like an idiot while talking to him thing. But Dan was a little different for me because Dan, if I had to the horseman of the apocalypse for me, he's one of the people that makes me wanna do more than just make cutting boards.
Exactly.
Like,
Yep.
he's the one that makes me wanna go in my craft room right now, and I'm working on a very cool art project. He inspired it. There's
Right.
2 things I'm
Right.
working on right now that he inspired,
Right.
and it's like, you don't get to meet people that inspire you that often, and I've had the privilege of meeting many people that inspire me. So, yeah, it's kinda cool. It's kinda cool seeing you work with him. It was really cool seeing the project. The finished project was absolutely freaking fantastic, and
It
but
was so much fun, and again, it was like that's like like that's what I wish I could be at some point. It's like him, like kind of like a just an artist, like an artist in the sense of like doing what you want to do. Like
Jeff
screw it.
Jeff
Yeah.
nailed it. Jeff nailed it talking about him because we were talking about how well he's turned pop culture into art.
Yes. He's
And
a
it's like he's better at it than literally anyone we know, and it's crazy.
no, I tried to explain it to, like, Bettina and other people. I'm like, he is like think about he's like a physical pop artist.
Mhm.
Like, think about Andy Warhol with but, like, with fit like, making
Oh, with
things
mixed media.
mixed media, thank you.
Exactly,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
the best way to put it, mixed media, yeah.
He's a mixed media Andy Warhol. I really like that. I really like that.
Yeah.
That is him. Um, so we're at just about I can't believe, but we are at just a hair over an hour. So I think it's time that we switch over and I really can't wait because it's been a bit, but I would love to know, Ethan, what is your thing of the week? And if you're
Well
gonna follow tradition, I know you know what the tradition is, so I'm fully expecting there to be two things of the week.
no, yeah, so I was trying to think of what I was gonna do.
Mhm,
I think my thing of the week is I think probably most people that listen probably know her already,
mhm.
but I can't not give her a shout out, and that's Emily Joyce. I love the the
Price is Right
yes,
merry-go-round?
that but I love that she calls it the sick day because that's
Mhm.
so right. So I love her work. I think she's whimsical. Her work is impeccable, and it's just so creative, and I love it so much. So that's my thing.
She's a
Yeah,
wonderful human being,
yeah,
honestly. She's
yeah,
just a wonderful human being. I would
yeah,
agree with that, and I do love that she called it the sick day because I always associated The Price is Right with sick days, so
yeah,
I do love that.
yeah.
Okay, cool. So Emily
Yeah.
Joyce, former guest of the show. I actually got to get her on again. It's
I
been
know
a
you
minute.
do. It's been a while. It's
I
been a minute.
I yeah, I mean, I broke bread with her family,
I
so
know you went there, right?
time to have her on again.
All right,
My
your
thing of the
thing of
week
week.
is my thing of the week is an interesting one because I know we've talked about it. Well, I've talked about it. I think it was when Corinne Blackstone was on. We talked about 143 Vinyl started doing DTF transfers. DTF means direct to film transfers. So basically, they make you a transfer that you could put on your stuff, like shirts, hats, whatever the hell you bags, whatever you want to put it on, and it makes your shirts look super duper professional. So if you ordered a digitally creative t-shirt, you got it by now. By the time this episode drops, you have your t-shirts. That is direct to film transfers. I made all of those shirts. I did not buy those shirts. I did not have a company make them. I made them. And it's an incredible technology. So 143 Vinyl, with no minimum order quantity, you can pretty much get transfers for anything that you can design on your computer. So I sent Ethan, I'm going to put it up on the screen now, but I sent Ethan a I there's Kathy's friends are having a 4th of July party. And when they told me about it, I was like, well, I am going to make the most goddamn America shirt that you could absolutely imagine, like epic peak America. So I envisioned a wolf and like monster trucks and like fighter jets and explosions and guns and red, white, and blue. So I started out with Midjourney, just working Midjourney for like 2 hours trying to get the perfect graphic. And I finally got something close. And then I took it into Photoshop and adjusted it, tweaked it, fixed it, drew over it, and then I put it in Illustrator and added like a comic booky kind of starburst design behind it and the word America in red, white, and blue. Like it is going to be the most ridiculously over the top shirt that you have ever seen in your life, and that's by design. I want it to be completely freaking ridiculous.
Like so ridiculous.
But I ordered the transfers from 143 Vinyl because they did such a good job on the transfers for digitally creators. So if you're looking to do something better than heat transfer vinyl, which is very good, there's nothing wrong with it. But if you're looking to do something more like full color, like professional graphics level stuff, or if you're looking to make your own merch, it's a lot cheaper than getting it done. Trust me. That's why
And
I did it.
can you store it? Like they basically store the image and you can just reorder?
No,
No. Okay.
but I think you can if you use their designer.
Oh,
If
okay.
you
All
just
right.
upload an image, yeah, then you're pretty much screwed. But
Okay.
it's so good. Like the process is fast. The first time I ordered, it took 4 days. The second time I ordered, which is why the shirts got out so late. I just finished them this week. I don't know what the hell's going on. It took them almost 11 days to get them to me. I don't know what the deal is. I imagine they're having because they just started doing this, so I imagine there's going to be ebbs and flows in the process. But the quality is exceptional and the shirts look really good. And plus, you can, I don't want to knock anyone that uses Gildan shirts for their merch, but I will never use a Gildan shirt for my merch. They're Bella Canvas shirts because I'm a fancy man and my listeners slash supporters slash
Deserve it.
customers deserve a fancy shirt.
Yes,
So
that's right.
check out 143 Vinyl. They already, they have all the Cricut stuff that everyone knows and loves, but now they're doing direct to film transfers. There's a lot of companies that do them, but they have no minimum order quantity and a 12 by 12 transfer, which is up to, I would say that would reasonably work on up to a 2XL shirt. That size transfer is 5 and a quarter with no minimum order quantity, and it's like $8 shipping flat rate. It's
It's
it,
awesome.
it's a no brainer. Like
And
if you
so
want to do
can
this
you
stuff,
use like you can use the Cricut heat press, you can
yep.
use
I actually can we see it? Hold on, can we? No, wait, hold on.
yeah, yeah, I see it.
There it is.
Right there. Yeah.
I have the HTV Ront auto press,
Yeah.
and it just makes it so easy. You set it to 345, 20 seconds, and then let it cool. Put a Teflon sheet under, 10 more seconds, and you're done. And that's the whole process. It takes about 3 minutes to make a shirt, and they look amazing. So
Yeah. They do
if
look
you
really,
guys
really
love your
good.
shirts, that's how they got made.
Well, and you were saying earlier the white part, the white background makes a huge
Yes,
difference too.
you actually get white as a transfer color. So
Right.
when what they print, whatever they print for you, they print white behind it. So the color is sitting on white. It's not sitting on the shirt.
So
So the
it's
colors
actually the color that you want.
exactly. People don't
Gotcha.
realize that that's a thing until they buy iron-ons, and you put iron on like a yellow shirt, and all of a sudden everything looks like sepia toned. and that's because you're seeing the color of the shirt through the transfer. These are opaque transfers. When you put them on, they are the color they are on the shirt. It's brilliant, and you could upload, like, any graphic file. They could pretty much take anything. You don't have to worry about mirroring, none of that. They do everything. You just put
So
the
it's
file up there, and it's ready to go.
so it's like even if I made my logo in a weird way that I work around that doesn't really work, and I don't know what I'm doing, and it just works, it works.
Especially if your friend who knows Illustrator really well redid it for you in a cleaner way, like, that would work really well too, so if you ever
Speaking
needed
of
to do
shirts,
that.
Vincent, though, I just
Oh, wow! I didn't know you bought one. Oh my
yeah,
god.
yeah,
I did not know you had one of those.
I
For
do.
those of you listening for those of you
Yes.
listening, Ethan is one of the first people I mean, I only did a limited run of them.
Mhm.
Wow, he has my broken heart. Ethan, I'm getting all misty. Actually, you know what's funny? Because the process was so good with this stuff, I'm actually gonna bring those back because those shirts are American Apparel,
Yep.
and they are super nice
Yeah,
shirts.
they're nice.
And the Bella Canvas shirts are about the same quality.
Yeah,
Uh,
I would say so. That's I use the Bella canvas for any shirts that I
100%.
get. Yeah,
I
yeah.
This one's Gildan because it was the only one I could get yellow at the time. I was in a hurry and I needed it for Maker Camp. This is actually the shirt I wore at Maker Camp. It's got my logo on the back
Oh,
because
yeah, yeah.
I have to tell people like, "Hey, just find me because I don't know what you look like. So come tap me on the shoulder. I won't be offended. It'll be fine." I might actually do that at Jimmy Speedway. I'll wear my digitally creative shirt, but either that or I'll wear my America shirt with my wolf and my monster truck and my guns and my flags, and it's
I
amazing.
one of my other favorite moments of Maker Camp is when we were talking about it, and I was like, when Chris Powell came up to me like really early on, he's like, "Hey," and I'm like, like I knew exactly who he was, but and you're like, "Oh, you didn't recognize the guy with the guy with the big beard like walking around because main camp is like 100%." And as we were making that joke, some other random person came up and they're like, "Oh, you're talking about me?" And he had a huge beard. It's like,
It's really funny because literally made this shirt bright yellow because I knew no one would be able to miss it in the sea of flannel,
yes,
and man,
exactly,
did I nail it.
exactly,
That's exactly
exactly.
what it was. It was a sea of flannel.
Yeah,
Um, I love Maker Camp. I can't wait to go back. I'm assuming I'm gonna see you there, so,
I hope so.
you'll at
Yeah, I
least be
think
there
so.
as a civilian, so
Yeah, one way or the other. And actually, my parents might come.
Whoa,
I know, right?
the Carters.
The Carter seniors.
Wow.
My dad is like made for Maker Camp. I
Mhm.
mean, he's the ultimate forever learner. Now, I mean, he's
Fantastic.
older now and everything like that. But yeah, they were like, I was like, you should come, and so I think they might, but we'll see.
Of course, the next event coming July 1st is, Jimmy Speedway, and by the way, if, as you're listening to this, if you're coming to Jimmy Speedway, drop me a message on Instagram because there's no way in hell I won't be there. Kathy will be there with me, so whoever comes gets
Awesome.
to meet her also. But yeah, I would love to know if you're coming. I know a couple of people that I've already asked, and they're like, "Yep, definitely gonna be there," so I'm
And
really excited.
what day is that? That's
That's a
a
Saturday. It's Saturday, July
Saturday.
1st,
Okay.
which I'm really, really looking forward to that. That's always a fun event. I've had
I know I
so
was
much
super
fun over
jealous
the
when you went
years.
last year, and I was
Oh,
like, ah,
last
that looks
year,
amazing.
and the year before,
Yeah.
it was my first. I'll never forget walking in the first time, the first year. Nobody was there yet. I was there stupidly early, and first person I met was freaking Jimmy, and he
Isn't it
talked
weird
about
though?
you.
Like the first time you meet Jimmy is like, I mean, he's the nicest person.
Meeting Jimmy's like the Kennedy assassination, like,
Yeah,
you remember it vividly.
yeah, exactly. But then, and all of a sudden, it's just like natural. Like it's
Mhm.
just, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, when you find out that you're a topic of conversation when you're not in the room, that's a great
yeah.
feeling. That's a great feeling. You know what else is a great feeling?
What?
Getting paid to do this podcast. And the people that make that happen are Matthew Serio from Artigiano Serio, Big Al Schultz of New York Woodworks, Tori Decker from Tori Did It, Ed Swanson of Ed's Clocks and More, Jake Drews of Make with Jake, Megan Chris from Onyx Designs Woodwork, Christian Neary of Warren Works, Ken Madden from Mad K Studios, David Wood from DW Wood Builds, Jeff Stein, aka A Weird Guy, Kim and Garrett from Kim and Garrett Make It, Rory Langefeld of RLO Woodworks and DIY, Robert J. Keller, Brian Arsenault, the Seven Hills Maker, Lars Coleman of Colorado Multicraft, Dave Bauer of Dave Bauer Art, Nick Birchtold of Birchtold Design Build, Donald LeBlanc of Fun with Woodworking, Jeremy Spees, Grant Alexander of the Clamp Podcast, Brad Harrison of Brad's Customs, and Billy Polton of Polton Projects. Thank you so much to everyone that supports this show, especially the people that just bought shirts. Again, if you ordered a shirt, you should have it by the time you hear this episode. Thank you so much. I'm sorry it took so long. It was out of my control, but as soon as I was able, those shirts got made and sent out. So I'm hoping you're loving them, and, put a picture in your stories, tag me in it, and show me. If you can't support the show financially or buy a shirt, that's perfectly fine. By all means, leave a review, share the show, turn someone new onto it, because every new viewer of this show is someone who I could potentially squeeze a few bucks out of, and I'm not stupid about that fact. So thank you so much for doing that, for the longevity of this little podcast, which just keeps going. May it change
Vincent,
its name, but it's always there.
Vincent, can I did have a second thing of the week, and that was Matthew, and I totally forgot that because Matthew is one of the biggest community supporters
Absolutely.
ever,
Absolutely.
I saw something today, and I made a note to have him be one of my things of the week. But
Hmm.
he's one of the things he loves to do, and I think it's amazing. Is he loves books and he finds
Hmm.
books and sends them to people, and I was lucky enough to receive one of those, and I love it. I think that's such a amazing idea of like just sending people that are in this community something that they're interested in when
Yep.
you find that for them. And I love that he does that. And Matthew, thank you.
Yeah, Matthew's good people. He actually sent me in December, he sent me a jewelry making book
Yep.
that I was just reading through it the day he sent it, and I was like, "Man, this is a dense book. Like, there's a lot in this. This is a perfect book for someone like me," and I really enjoyed it.
Well, he genuinely cares about the community
Hmm.
and loves the community, and I love that. So
Also,
that was one of the things that was going to be my second thing of the week, but I couldn't remember it. So
remember I was talking about a YouTube channel. I couldn't remember the poor
yeah,
guy's
yeah.
name, which I felt bad about. Well, I remember. His name is CJ Booth, Boothe. He's
CJ
on
Booth.
Instagram as MCJ Booth, Boothe, and his YouTube channel is CJ's Universe. Um, this kid's going places. In fact, he's going to be on the podcast in a couple of weeks. We've already decided that I'm going to have him on. I want to talk to him a little bit and pick his brain, because I love when young people are this cool
Hmm.
already, and he's good at what he does, and I really like him. So he said he listens to the podcast, so my guess is he's hearing me talking about him right now. So CJ, I love your
CJ's
stuff, man.
Universe.
Yep, CJ's
Awesome.
Universe.
Subscribe.
He did a video where he was building a cyberpunk city, and then he did these really cool shots from the car's eye view of driving through that city. Like, it was just a great video, and he flopped in the middle of it, like the whole thing just failed, and he started from scratch and redid the whole damn thing. It's such a good video. It's absolutely worth
Tell a
watching.
story, and I love that. That's
Tell
awesome.
us a story. Why don't you tell the story of where people can find you, my good friend? And because I think people, I have a feeling, and I could be wrong about this. I have a feeling there's a lot of people that know who I am, that know who you are. But for those rare folks that don't, where can people find you on the interwebs?
I am on everything as Ethan Carter Designs. So Instagram, YouTube, except for Twitter, which you don't want to follow me on Twitter because I'm boring. But yeah, Instagram, YouTube, everything else, TikTok, Ethan Carter Designs.
Excellent, excellent, a
Yeah,
worthwhile follow, and it's it's been great chatting with you. It feels like old times. So
it does. It does. It makes me nostalgic. It
I
does.
wanted to I wanted to have you on. I actually wanted to have you on for the 4-year anniversary of the podcast.
Yeah,
But it was just like it didn't work out your schedule, and I was like, "You know what?
yeah,
I got a different idea." And I just ended up doing the state of the show.
yeah.
And by the way, I should address the elephant in the room. I know content's been a little weird the last couple of weeks. I get it. And last week I could not just do an episode without acknowledging Rebecca Cole. Like, there was no way that was going to slide by and you guys weren't going to
It's,
get some kind of tribute episode for her, because she was a very
I
close
think
friend of
that's
mine, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I really wanted to make sure that people knew what she was like when, as I said in the Instagram post, which I don't even know if I posted the socials, I probably didn't, but I maybe in the description of the show I actually said I wanted people to remember her at her best, and I think she was at her best that day when she was on the show. And she was just wonderful and bubbly and turned people on and made people love her, and that's how I want her to be remembered. That's why I shared the show again. So I hope you guys listened. I hope you didn't just skip it. If you did, no guilt. Go back and listen to it. She's
go back. Yeah, go
Yeah,
back. Right.
go back and listen to it. It's a podcast. You can do that. Go watch it on YouTube. You can There's visuals all over the place with the episode. So I think that's going to do it. Ethan, it has been an absolute pleasure, buddy.
Oh man, have me on anytime. I love this, Vincent.
Don't
It's
listen. The last time you
last
came
time we
on as
said
a
that.
guest, the last time you came on as a guest, I do believe I said, "Who knows? Maybe one day you'll be co-host."
It was it it is funny. I still get people that say that they loved the two of us together, and to me that makes me so proud because, as I've said a million times, I could never have imagined myself being on a podcast once, let alone for 100 plus episodes. And I give you all the credit for that. And uh, I just feel blessed that that was a thing that happened to me. Um, and I think I grew a lot from that as
hmm
well. And so, as always, I really appreciate you taking a chance on this stumbling word person.
Stumbling word person.
Exactly. That's
Ethan Carter,
exactly right.
stumbling word person. I
That
love it.
slash leather daddy.
Well,
Yeah. So
if you
thank you for that,
if
Vincent, and thank you for having me on again. It really it was a it was a very important and special thing that that we got to experience together.
Mhm.
And it's something that I don't take for granted, and I think I grew a lot from it, and I appreciate that from that alone. I appreciate, but I also got to meet a lot of amazing people through doing the podcast with you too. So
Well, I'm just going to put this out there, and I said it on the state of the show, and I will say it to you because you're right here in front of me at the
you can
moment.
actually see me though.
I
Yeah,
can actually see you.
yeah.
I will say it to you today in person. This show would not exist were it not for Ethan Carter. Like, you were pivotal to this show being as important to people as it was. And just because you're not on it every week, don't think that I ever forget how important you are to this show still being around, how important you are to it having the reputation it does, and how important you are to, my own history as a podcaster. And you are always welcome to come on the show. If you ever have something you need to promote, if you ever have something you want to sell, if you're ever homeless, and I'm not, which who knows how that might go, but if you ever need anything, I'm just a phone
Yeah.
call away, and I'm always there for you. And I appreciate everything you've done for me over the years, because I don't get a chance to tell people enough that I appreciate them. So I appreciate you and everything you did for me and for this show. Because, like I said, it wouldn't exist without you. It just wouldn't. There's just no way this show would have probably been over in 6 months, but it ended up lasting 3 years with you. And it was good 3 years, and it's still going. So you always have a place to pop on if you ever want to have a chat. Um, I'm sure people listening to this are going, "Oh my God, come on, guys. Come on, guys. Come on, guys." But
Yeah. Can we stop it before we cry?
yeah, we're
But
both going to start crying. It's not like I've ever cried on the podcast
no,
before.
never.
That's never happened. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. And thank you, everyone, for listening,
Yeah.
watching, or however you consume the show. I really appreciate it, as always. We'll be back again next week. Do I know who the guest is? Do I ever know who the guest is? 90% of the time, I have no idea. I'll either be talking to someone or I'll be talking alone, but I'll be talking next week, and I hope you'll be there to listen. Until then, have a great week, everybody.